Good tidings, all you beautiful people. It is League Unlock. Eric here with Mark as we wait for more off-season news. The countdown continues. We're getting close, the final week before free agency kicks off when things are really going to explode. But today, we're looking at the biggest off-season moves that have happened, and you can talk about, okay, well, now, in hindsight, maybe it wasn't actually a big off-season move. But when these moves did happen, it was ground-shattering to the scenes and regions that they happened in.
Yeah, hey, this is what people love about free agency. Sure, you can talk about the ones that are the success stories all the time, but the ones that everybody does like to look back on, it's the ones that made the biggest impact in that offseason, the ones that were the one that everybody wants to talk about. You want to get online, chat about it with your friends. These are those type of moves, and they're always exciting to talk about.
And remember, a lot of these happened players at their peak levels doing some big changes, starting with Immortals in 2016, Fnatic after their undefeated run in EU, 18-0 season, a top 4 finish at Worlds. HUNI and REIGNOVER come over to North America for the newest org on the block, which was Immortals in 2016, and they're joined by PERKZ and Wild Turtle, staples in the North American scene already. But the big move was the star top side of the map in Fnatic after they annihilated in Europe.
Yeah, especially seeing what had happened with Fnatic and how everything had been going with HUNI to get that type of move, to bring them over to North America. Not just HUNI, but to bring REIGNOVER over for this Immortals roster, this new one. And, one of these situations where kind of the first instance that we're seeing of a North American org, one of the first times of seeing them, the creation of them and them going, look, got to make that splash right away, free agency. And
salaries were cheaper in 2016.
Salaries were certainly cheaper. Unfortunately, looking back, I think Immortals is probably the most successful iteration of that mindset, that idea of implementing, bring them on over. We need talent right away. And actually, for Immortals, it worked out. Outside of course, some big time and extremely memorable playoff disappointments.
Yeah,
but their regular season record, the results are absolutely there.
And it was right away. It was instant. They went out 12-0, started in the spring split, and remember how badly they were annihilating people on the Rift? It was disgusting. I mean, HUNI had his rookie of the split, was clearly the best top laner. There with Soaz throughout 2015. At Worlds, he had some bad games against SMEB. But for the most part, him and REIGNOVER absolutely showed up on the international stage as well. So you would have thought the NA should be pudding pops, easy peasy for these boys. And it was in the regular season, as you mentioned. 33-3 over 2016. This is when there were best of 3 eras. Or it started at least at the summer split, but 33-3, that's pretty damn good after going 18-0 in the regular season with Fnatic.
It's completely among the best that we've ever seen from an LCS team as far as the record goes in that regular split. But of course, when you're talking about 2016 Immortals, you got to have that, of course, and you're waiting for that shoe to drop, and that shoe to drop is Lucian top lane and the playoffs and how it went for the rest of the Immortals.
Yeah, they ended up going 9-11 in playoffs. But even outside of just HUNI and REIGNOVER, which were obviously huge, this is PERKZ after winning with CLG when they won in the summer split. So he was at all-time high for wanting him on a roster, and Wild Turtle was replaced by TSM, or by DOUBLELIFT on TSM, who we'll get to in a minute, as you can see. But it's not like these guys were on a huge downward trajectory for their careers. They were still sought-after free agents.
Right, when you're talking about both PERKZ and Wild Turtle, very long careers in the LCS, still going on in the LCS. And what you have seen here with Immortals and when they were on that roster, you're right. This was more so back towards even the early days. I don't think even at, maybe for PERKZ at the very peak, but for even Wild Turtle, I don't think he had reached his peak yet. And that's saying something considering his time on TSM and the success there, even with Immortals, not at that point. And that's what was so exciting, right? To have that talent, that, somewhat domestic talent, which, again, even now, not a ton of in North America. And you add in, of course, as we said, the spicy, extra exciting imports coming over, the run that HUNI had before that year. That's what made this such an extremely exciting and such a noteworthy and, one that you want to get online and talk with your friends about type of team and move that organization made. And props to Immortals for it.
And you can talk about, okay, the playoff disappointments, but that was absolutely one of the biggest fan favorite teams outside of the big boys that we've ever had in North America. And half a decade later, the only reason Immortals has fans is still probably because of this 2016 roster, even though none of them have been associated with the organization in a long time. It did a fantastic starting point for building a fan base. They did it right in 2016. The fourth biggest, and what we alluded to, is TSM Doublelift. Round 1, not round 2, where he came after Team Liquid. We're talking back in 2016, that same split with Immortals. Talk about how insane that spring split was in the LCS. There were both these massive changes happening. But this is, just think about the TSM versus CLG rivalry was actually a rivalry coming up to 2016 since the start and existence of League of Legends. And this happened after CLG won their first title that they've been waiting years and years for, and it was Doublelift and Afro that led them there. Then you had this drama where allegedly Afro basically said to CLG, it's me or Doublelift. They couldn't work together, so getting kicked, Doublelift, who was at time the best AD carry in North America and the second best player behind PERKZ, to go to your main rival was insane. Insane.
It's pretty crazy when you talk about Doublelift and TSM as the organizations in this type of list, because you could have two other pretty much instances involving these ones. Of course, the Sven and Mithy transaction going on with TSM and that move as well as even the recent Doublelift replacing Kabe situation with TSM. But you're right, for me, the bigger one is the very initial one of Doublelift joining TSM from CLG, because that in the early days of the LCS and the couple times you'd seen that CLG roster, Rush Hour, Doublelift, and Afro, that was about as star power as we had seen so far. And that was what you really wanted to talk about. And that, again, Rush Hour, that duo was what so many people grabbed to initially as what their introduction even to the LCS was that duo, their chemistry, their, everything that they brought to the table.
The stream highlights, they seemed like best pals on and off the Rift, which is what made this off the Rift drama even crazier.
It was just like being, your bot lane that you queue up with all the time, right? You're thinking everything's fine, and then there's some cracks there. There's some deep issues coming through, and yeah, that's what you see when you're talking about a professional relationship, and especially one in the bot lane. That's the way we know it is and the way it goes, and that's how it went. That's the way she goes for CLG, and that was the transition. But look, I know things went poorly for CLG in the long run. In the very short term, things were okay.
It right away, years later, yes, of course, CLG completely faded into nothingness in the LCS. But that very first split, remember, they went head-to-head, CLG and TSM, and it was Doublelift's replacement getting the last laugh in the finals. CLG saying, see, we don't need this guy to be the best team in North America. Then Doublelift would win a few more titles or something. Something happened there. And CLG, not so much. But right away, they won that offseason. But either way, hindsight or not, that was one of the craziest off seasons, that 2016 as a whole. The craziest we've seen in the LCS.
Yeah, because not only for, as we've talked about CLG, even on the TSM side moving forward, that is the offseason, the transaction that's setting forward that period of dominance that they had
Yellow Star too. We don't even talk about that. We talk about HUNI and REIGNOVER coming over to Immortals. Some more of that Fnatic came over to TSM. Didn't work nearly as well, that bot lane. But combine that with them getting Doublelift with the rivalry, it was insanity.
Yeah, that's what I really love talking about this one, because you mentioned, of course, we had Immortals and HUNI coming over, but that's one way. This is both teams, both sides of the coin, having that impact here as we talk about with Doublelift leaving CLG, Stixxay coming and getting that championship. And then, of course, we all know what happens with history with TSM and Doublelift for the next couple of years. One of the best and most impactful moves in the LCS's history.
Yeah, and the storylines that played out throughout that spring split are among the very best that we've ever had in the history of North American League of Legends. Number 3 on the list, we move outside of North America. Don't worry, guys. It's not all LCS that we're talking about today. And this is It's one of the forgotten off-season moves, and I think people don't rank it as highly as they should. We've even kind of done similar lists to this in the past and not really talked about it as much. But we're talking Uzi joining OMG, and this was 2015. So this is back-to-back World Finals that we saw out of Uzi. He'd been with a Starhorn or Royal Club his entire career since he was 17 and became a pro. And he goes to OMG, who was... I mean, they were at 2014 Worlds. They were kind of the class of the LPL at the time. And it looked brilliant. It looked perfect. It looked like a superstar team where you say, look at all that Uzi could do with a not so great team around him. And look at all OMG could do with an okay bottom lane. You put them together. Oh, easy LPL titles, Mark.
Hey, we still have not learned this lesson that every single time you can't just take one nice thing, missing something, and these two parts, they're going to fit together. Not every time. Not every time, my man. Ain't the same Lego pieces coming together for this one. And that's what you saw for OMG that year, right? Because this was supposed to be, like Immortals, a big transaction, a big shift in that organization.
The LPL scene and Chinese community went insane for this move because Uzi was so highly regarded.
And they should have. The expectation absolutely is there, and it should be there for the type of move that we saw at the time. But unlike Immortals, there actually is no real result to show for it. Because as we talked with Immortals, there's disappointment, of course, in the playoffs. Lucian top. But there is the incredible run to get to that point. That didn't happen for OMG, unfortunately, after this transaction. And to me, that's even more mind-blowing than what happened with Immortals.
The big thing OMG did have is one of the most hilarious team intros for the spring split, and make sure you check it out. I mean, we have the video playing here, but it was. I mean, they have Uzi running hilariously.
It's peak eSports of the era, is what I'll say.
Yeah, and LPL trying to be like extra edgy with cool music. It's one of the most hilarious things you'll ever see. I hope they were just telling these guys what to do. Do a cool kick, Loveling. Do a punch, cool.
They're watching too many of traditional sports highlight intros and going, guys, but these are nerds. Guys, we're nerds.
You put an esport edge on it, and then they do their favorite characters. It didn't work, but it didn't work on the Rift either. Yeah, they lost 0-3 to LGD in the spring quarterfinals, and 3-1 to Vici in summer. And it never clicked with this team. It was a classic case of Uzi was used to getting all the resources, right? That's what he had been on Starhorn. That's why he'd been so successful. That didn't work on OMG because Going was one of the best top laners in the world, and Cool was highly regarded as a mid laner. It was all about the top side of the map for OMG. There's not enough minions. There wasn't enough gold to go around, and obviously the details of the mystery behind all the off the Rift drama, because we know that this team just didn't get along, and that was the biggest issue because it had so much talent that even if there weren't enough resources to go around, they should have been a world's caliber team, but I just don't think the players liked each other.
No, and that's one of the things that we do talk about, right? As far as saying that this is a perfect situation to add this. But again, it's not compatible. It doesn't work because of the players, the mindsets, everything else. And one of the things that you said that is important is when you're talking about these resources, well, it's one thing to say, okay, we're going to give Uzi these resources, but the way that Uzi played and the way that you have to play around Uzi and his power as well, it's not about getting to 1 or 2 item power spike. It's absolutely getting to that 3, 4, 5 power spike item where nobody can touch this guy's situation on the Rift. And to put that much resources, put that much attention down towards that side for what had been going on for OMG the year before, it was too much of a difference. And as you saw, when you don't get those results early and you're making these big changes, it can lead to some of these conflicts. And as we saw with OMG, really did seem to then become on a personal level, not performing.
And it seemed like Cool had the best relationship with the organization because throughout spring and summer, you had so many substitutes coming in throughout. In the summer split, everybody but Cool was benched at one point. Even Uzi was benched from the starting role before he eventually came back to push them into playoffs. It was an absolute mess within the organization for the team, and obviously that carried over onto the Rift. But Uzi still has some of his best highlights on OMG, so individually, it was all right.
Hey, there are still some absolute nutty highlight plays, but that's what you're going to get with a player of the skill of Uzi. Look, it's not out of the cards that Uzi makes a comeback out of retirement in the next couple of
Not
years.
going to be on OMG.
I was going to say, I think we can safely say, though, not going to be with OMG, unfortunately.
A super team that worked a little bit better than OMG, maybe not to the levels that people were hyping, was KT Rolster in 2017. This is when the Rocks Tigers blew up when they couldn't beat SKT, and you saw Peanut say, you can't beat them, join them. I'm going to SKT. And SMEB did the very opposite. He said, all right, I'm going to build a new team that is built to take down SKT, and Score finally gets a team around him. DEFT and Mata in the bot lane. Pawn come over as Pawn and DEFT return to the LCK, and people love to meme on KT. They didn't make Worlds their first year, but immediately these guys made the finals in the spring split, their first split together.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of memes that I can accept about KT, and there's ones that are even fun, like not getting excited about KT, although I don't know how fun that is sometimes when you look back at the history of that one for KT fans. But when you are thinking about them and what they had that year, I still consider it a success. That's still getting the check mark from me as far as what you were accomplished and what you did. Enough good things. And as we know, paid off in the end, of course, you know, with that extra couple of years, getting to that championship, getting old man Score, finally getting to leave the LCK as a victor and champion. But
I'm just glad. I'm glad they kept this roster together. I know UCal came in 2018, but imagine a full year you go away, it ends. You're getting reverse swept and not qualifying for Worlds, and then you just blow up the super team. I'm glad they got 2 years together, and obviously, yeah, they got that World or that LCK title for Score. They were far and away the best Korean team. I still stand by, I will die on this one, that they were the second best team at the 2018 World Championship. That's it.
I agree, man. When you look at the way that things went in the bracket, how things shaped out, it was unfortunate.
Unlucky draw.
Being there live, getting to see them play is one of the best things I think I've ever seen in my life, getting to see KT put on those type of performances against IG in that quarterfinals. And yeah, you're very right in the way that they showed that performance in that form, and getting to see them stay together. That was the big thing as well, because not only the going back to the Rocks Tigers, of course, that everyone loves to see them still together, but just even the memories that they had built with KT was enough to say that you want to see them stick together, want to see them find that ultimate goal, get across that finish line, and of course, got that sweet reward they did.
And the important thing is, this wasn't washed up players. It was SMEB who was still at peak performance. He was talking about as the best player in the world in 2016.
Hey, this is 1 year removed from people saying better than Faker.
Yeah, this is Score, who was, you know, still the rock that he was for KT throughout his entire career. Pawn and DEFT were still doing well in the LPL, and Mata just wanted to stop playing support Jace, so he came back to the LCK. But these guys were still all at an extremely high level, and people were hyped about this in the offseason, as they should have been.
Hey, KT Rolster back then, that is one of my favorite rosters in the history of League of Legends, played competitively. Got a lot of good feelings about that.
Now we reach number one on the list, and this, over the years, initially you would have had it almost in the top 5 right away, but because of how things have played out, you have to put it number one. And it was insane when it happened. I remember reading the rumors, and even before Jacob Wolf was breaking stuff, even when he did break it or rumor it, Caps going to G2 and PERKZ role swapping to AD carry. You remember at the time, Mark, hearing this stuff, we were both like, come on, man, that is nutty. That's not happening.
It's not happening for so many different reasons why you didn't expect this to happen. Number one, the Caps angle. Let's talk about that. You're on Fnatic. You go to the World's Finals. What's going on? We got an LEC. We have a Western team, European team representing.
How are you going to do better than that?
Baby Faker's finally made it. And then on the G2 side, oh my God, you made this amazing run. No one thought you'd make it past RNG. You got the big upset. Your solo laners, Wonder and PERKZ, what amazing plays they made. Now you're going to tell me that PERKZ is going to go down and play ADC, which, excuse me, this is the year after we have just seen the ADC role go massively change for the first time ever in its history, seeing things like G2's Heimerdinger bot lane. Shout out to Yarden. Man, this was so unexpected on completely both sides for multiple reasons to get it to happen. And then, as you've said, over the years, to see it play out the way it has and what it's done for G2 and what the individuals have done, man, I don't know how this can't be the number one.
It was mind-blowing the way that it happened. Obviously, Carlos and G2 did a fantastic job announcing it with their video, and then all the guys did afterwards was, 4 straight LEC titles, an MSI title, the World Finals, a semi-final berth at Worlds, and every single MVP in Europe has been from G2 during that stretch. 2 to Caps, 2 to Yankos. But really, it just propelled Caps' career to another level. And in 2019, it took PERKZ less than a year to be considered a world-class AD carry at a different role.
Hey, you take that sample, you take from this, the moment this transaction happens until present day, and you look back at what's happened. And yes, outside of course, winning a world championship, what else has there to been for G2 to accomplish? What other team is it that you would rather stack up behind the world champions that we've had in FPX and Damwon and say, okay, well, who's the next best? It's got to be G2 and what they've done. There's no way that you can argue against it in the accomplishments and what they do. It is absolutely incredible. It is rarefied air.
Look at FPX. They win the world championship. They don't even make worlds the next year. G2 gets a top 4 finish after, okay, yeah, they got smacked by FPX, but the consistency over that 2-year stretch, almost unmatched worldwide.
And you're adding in an MSI title in there as well. You're adding in the finals for Europe. You're adding in the MVPs that they're picking up. You're adding in the all-pro teams. It is just more, and more for G2. And they just keep delivering with this roster. As you've seen, when we've been talking about these, these transactions, these ones that are most talked about from the offseason, doesn't always translate into getting results. It can translate into the regular season and then not playoffs. It can translate into absolutely nothing with OMG. But with G2, this is why you make these moves. This is why you roll the dice on trying something so risky, because when it pays off like this, the success you get is unmatched.
And not only did it obviously propel G2 to new heights, but it raised up the entirety of the LEC because of how hard they were smashing their main rival like Fnatic, and the rest of the teams were like, man, we got to kick this into a new gear to even compete with these guys. And because of that, you've seen Europe be the most competitive it's ever been over these last 2 years. It's because of G2.
And hey, they're innovators as well. They are willing to push the meta, push what is in the game right now at their disposal, and take it to you in ways that you weren't expecting. And that is one of the best things that G2 has been able to do. And as you said, raising the level of play in the LEC, it's raised the level of mental strength and mental preparedness that you have to have when you're going up against a team like G2, knowing that, look, this could be the week that Wonder's breaking out, another e-girl support in the top lane, or, oh no, this could be a week where PERKZ is deciding to play Zoe as ADC. Who knows what it's going to be? And oh wait, might just be a special trip down memory lane for a good old Caps Yasuo performance. That's just G2 eSports, baby.
And it has been for 2+ years. But the main thing to remember here is when you're looking at off-season moves, initially you might raise an eyebrow or look at that and say, that's the end of this team. They're doomed. You might have said, okay, well, G2, that's it. You had one of the best mid laners in the West, in the world. Now you're throwing him on AD carry duty. You're doomed. Don't judge it just based on the move, because G2 is just a perfect example of a calculated risk actually paying off, and all of a sudden they're a world-class team. So don't overreact to the offseason is the lesson from this list. But that's all the time today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you guys as always. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll catch you guys and gals on that flippity flop.